Righteousness is not an aspect that implies the impossibility of creating a self measurable to what others regard in a moderate sense. Yet, the self is not a creation that suits the general standards of social selection. Individuals often fail to understand that others superciliously have an installed perspective, obtained through intuition rather than reasoning. We, as human beings, possess the quality of being changeable and variable. Therefore, it is not about fighting change. Instead, it is about changing health within your own framed self. This quote was quoted from Theory of Framing Functionalities, a book written by the Algerian talented young author Oussama Houassi, to whom I give the word to present himself. Welcome, Oussama, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Oussama Houassi. I'm 27 years old. I'm a published author. I majored with English civilization, English literature and civilization master's degree. No, Boomerdas.
Oh, okay.
And I am a TEFL certified English teacher. I do marketing as well. I create content, and of course I write.
As we have seen in many of your social media posts, writing is therapy. So do you consider it, do you really feel that way towards writing? Does it energize you or exhaust you?
Personally, I always believe that writing is therapy because it's the only thing that gives me the permission to be myself, or to channel my inner states towards writing. So I don't feel that I'm judged by a pen and a paper, or let's say laptop, and I type words to the computer. Completely the opposite. It doesn't give you a reaction compared to a person who gives you a reaction. So if I tell you something and I can sense that you're not on the same level of reception as much as writing is, I go directly to writing. So that's why I always keep things inside and I pour them out on a computer or pen, paper. It doesn't really exhaust me. It's completely the opposite. It energizes me, but if you are on the process of writing a long project, it exhausts you mentally.
You feel that you're completely yourself with your paper, and there's no reaction from that paper, so you just write whatever you are thinking about.
Exactly.
What to you are the most important elements of good writing?
I don't think there's a clear definition of what a good writer is and what a bad writer is.
Oh, you think?
I think so, yes. Because for example, if I write something and you come and criticize it, if I write something good and you come and criticize it, that doesn't make me a bad writer. If someone writes something bad and they criticize it, that makes them a potential writer, because they have the margin of learning. So even if you write something that's considered a masterpiece in the eyes of people, some people are going to criticize you, and you have people who write publish, let's say, articles and essays to criticize literary books or literary works. So you can be fundamentally a good writer if you learn how to use the mistakes well, you learn your lessons well, then you are a potentially good writer. If you don't know how to use those mistakes, you don't learn your lessons, you don't take the critics due to ego, due to many things, you're not going to be a good writer. So there is a good, let's say, potential good writer, and there is a bad, let's say, potential one who's, let's say, who chose to be bad, to stay bad. You see?
Take those critics personally. It's not,
exactly.
It's not the writing that's bad, that he is bad.
Exactly. I mean, that's why a lot of people don't have. I'm not going to say the courage, but they don't have, let's say, they don't have the guts to work on something huge, to work on a project and publish it, because they are afraid of receiving critics. And if they receive critics, their self-image is going to be damaged. And for them, this is what they look to preserve. They don't look on preserving, let's say, potential learning possibilities and so on.
So there's how to say, a long period of overthinking how people would react to that book instead of just publishing it.
Yeah, of course.
At what point should someone call himself a writer? After publishing or during writing?
I think during writing you can call yourself a writer, but I don't like to give tag names to things.
Yeah.
So if, for example, you write stuff on a regular basis, let's say that is yourself, you wake up every morning, you write a poem. It gives you the title of a writer because you're doing it regularly. You're giving time for your craft, and you're polishing your talent every day. So this is what I call a writer. Writer doesn't have to be a published writer.
Exactly, yes.
It can be like someone who's doing it as a hobby, is doing it as a therapy, as we talked earlier. So anyone who writes regularly, they give time and energy and effort to writing is a writer for me.
You as a writer. So what was the first time you thought about starting writing? Since
it's a very long story, but I'm going to summarize it.
Okay.
So my mom is an Arabic teacher. So she used to take me to primary school instead of leaving me to babysitters and so on. At the age of 4 or 5, I don't really recall everything, but what I recall is she was giving me
that environment,
papers and the environment and so on.
Of education.
I mean, environment is one of them, education is one of them, but something that is repetitive. Every day you go, you have a paper and you scratch.
Yes.
So when I started to learn words, I started to write sentences. And by the age of 12, like when I started to establish the system of language, I started to write poems in Arabic. And the first one was about an animal. It's a very stupid idea. When I want to get inspired, I go back to the same poem, I read it, and then I start to write.
The first
ever, yes. It was in Arabic. And then from then I started to write. Started with poetry, and then I started to alternate between poetry and prose. One of the people who encouraged me is my mom. She used to ask my Arabic teacher about the things that I write. Ta'bir kitabi, as we say in written expression.
How many hours a day do you write? If you do it.
I have an advice for this. Is actually gives me the space to give advice, to provide advice for those who want to write. Try to write daily. It doesn't matter how many hours you give, but in the weekends, do take advantage of the weekend. So how many hours? I would say minimum is 2 to 3 hours every day. Depends on. Let's say, I'm not going to say inspiration, but depends on my well-being. If I'm mentally, let's say, firm and solid during that day, I write like 2 hours, 3 hours non-stop.
Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer? Maybe an author from whom you adopted your writing style or something in this book?
Alright, so from this, I would say Alfred Adler, What Life Could Mean to You is a very interesting book.
Psychology?
Alfred Adler is a psychologist. He developed the Algerian psychology. I could also name one, which is Soren Kierkegaard, Sickness Unto Death. It talks about spirituality and so on, the connection between you and God from a philosophical perspective. How can you achieve your ultimate self through despair? So he mentioned that you need to achieve the point of despair until you discover who you are truly. Because when everything is broken, that's where you understand where your true self resides. But let's say if we're talking creative writing, I would say Ernest Hemingway. I really like his style, and it influenced me in a very deep sense. I'd also say Scott Fitzgerald. Description. I take the style of description from Scott Fitzgerald.
Edgar Allan Poe, no?
Oh yes.
That's a good writer.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
How did you come up with the title for your book? This specific title.
Nice question. Alright, so the title is that framing as a theory has functions. So for example, you go through multiple frames until you achieve what is pleasant as a self for you. So for example, if I want to install certain things in myself, I would have to go through different functions for those characteristics to be framed inside myself. So I put them inside that frame, and they stay there because they went through those functions that accepted them and harnessed them in a way or another to be there, to be inside the frame.
Yeah. Since your book talks about psychology and philosophy in general, have you been interested in it since you were young?
Yes, I had interest in psychology since you can say high school.
Yeah. What was the factor? A book you read, maybe?
No, I had a relative who was interested in psychology, so I took one book, which was it's a book. It's Freud's interpretation of dreams.
Yeah, I know him.
I read that, and then I had, let's say, many people. Let's say adolescence is a very tricky stage of life. It's where you're open to psychological disorders.
Yes.
So you find a lot of people in that age who are depressed and anxious, and they have OCD.
Suffer from a lot of...
Exactly, they suffer from psychological disorders. So one of the things that made me start researching about psychology is I had like an existential episode which drove me to depression.
Yeah.
And then from then I started to research about both, let's say, my existence and both my mental existence as well, state as well. So I started to research in psychology, and then I read philosophy and so on. I was alternating between two, and psychology is a branch of philosophy, so it's very easy for me to go back to the source and go back to psychology.
Did you find an answer to that? Or do we find an answer in your book?
I think in the book, you'll find a lot of stories, personal stories, like personal experiments. You'll find, let's say, how did I go from shy to outgoing? How did I deal with friends who are not friends, like in the real sense?
Yes.
You'll find a lot of stories inside.
So you shed light on what you said, your experience with depression in that questioning period.
I did, I did.
Okay.
I told a lot of people, because I don't talk too much about myself. If you don't know me, you should read the book.
Yeah. What is the main thing or idea that you want to deliver to the reader through the book? Since we have talked about psychology itself and your personal experiences, so how did you balance between the two to give for the readers a reason to read this?
It's a very nice question and complicated to answer, but I'll do my best. All right, so the message I want to give to the reader, or just to get them to read the book, is that as humans, we are in life as passengers.
Yes.
So it's very cruel and sad if you die and you don't really discover who you truly are in the deep sense of the word. You see. And to reach that stage, you need to go through a lot of momentum. And that momentum has ups and downs. It has despair, it has happiness. It has validation, it has the absence of validation.
Yes.
It has you being evil, it has you being good. So this roller coaster is what pushed me to actually write the book. It talks about the implementation of features or characteristics in someone's personality. How can someone go from confident to arrogant? How can someone go from shy to confident, and so on?
He loses that balance.
Exactly, yes. You either lose the balance or you lose your way. And I talked about a lot of concepts. I mean, it takes a lot of time to actually talk about them. But you can go, for example, one of the concepts is called vital silence. So vital silence is the absence of validation, or is the absence of remarks. So for example, I bought a shoe. This is an example mentioned in the book. I bought a new shoe.
Yeah.
I went outside and my friends saw the shoe, but they didn't comment on the shoes.
Yes.
What is my reaction going to be? The absence of validation. So this
absence of validation.
Yes, the absence of validation.
So
it's called vital silence.
Someone expects at least a compliment, for example.
Very nice. You're getting it.
We've talked about adolescence being filled with hardships. Let me ask you this then. What kind of readers are you trying to reach throughout the book?
All right, so I was approached by many categories. And one thing is that some people who are not, let's say, in depth, or they're not probed into the into psychology or philosophy, they don't really know the basis, at least find difficulties understanding the concepts.
Yeah.
So,
sorry to cut you.
Yes.
Is it more technical in the book? Did you use technical words that, as you said, some people won't understand?
yeah, linguistically, I used like
Okay,
cognitive, cognition,
okay.
cognizant,
So
variables.
people who don't understand those words will feel lost somehow, won't
Exactly,
get
yes.
the message.
Yes. So you need at least to have some basis in psychology or philosophy to understand what the message of the book.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it's going to be challenging.
Challenging, yeah. What risks have you taken with your writing that have paid off, of course? Some risks that you took.
I would say risking time, because time for me is the most valuable resource ever. I really respect.
Wait, risking or investing time?
I'd say risking and investing.
Yeah, okay.
Risking time is very, because for example, as a writer you go through a journey, and that the completion of the journey is either you publish your book or you're going to get depressed. One of the two.
Okay.
So for example, let's say if you spend 7 hours, I used to spend 7 hours to 8 hours writing the book. So if you spend 7 hours to 8 hours and you at one moment you feel like your brain cannot really pressure you more, can't really squeeze more, it's going to give up on you. And then when it gives up on you, you feel bad because you wasted time. This is the first reaction you have. But in terms of absolute risk, I would say risking my mental state.
Yes.
Because imagine, for example, you write from 9 a.m. I used to wake up at 5 sometimes.
Oh.
Yeah. Sometimes you write from 5 p.m. until 1, from 5 a.m. until 1 p.m.
Yeah.
You write non-stop. My mom told me, "I'll come eat." I'll tell her no, because an idea came and I need to develop. You see, so it's a continuous wheel.
Journey.
You can't really stop. It's a continuous episode.
Okay.
So I would say my mental state, and it's scary because when people listen to this, they think it's dangerous. No, it's not. For me, it's the flavor of writing. This is it. So you sacrifice your time, your energy, and your mental being to write in, to accomplish something that you're really passionate about.
Whom do you trust for objective and constructive criticism for your work, and how did you how do you process and deal with negative book reviews?
So one of the people I trust is my sister, because she studied English as well. So whenever I have, let's say, a finished draft, I use her as a better reader.
Yeah.
So she reads the draft and she gives me, let's say, points and let's say.
Was it objective? No.
It was, yes. She's very objective.
Okay.
And then if I go to another one, my friend, and he's very straightforward, so I cherry pick the people who give me feedback. So it was straightforward. He reads and then he gives me feedback.
Okay.
So these are the people I truly trust with feedback. For the second part of the question is how I deal with criticism. Let's say, for example, I personally don't have like a full sense of ego. So I take the feedback and I learn from it. This is what I'm doing with the second book that I'm writing. So I took the criticism from the first one. I took the critic and I'm working on exactly implementing what people wanted me to implement.
Yeah.
Because I had, let's say, in Amazon, I had like few reviews due to the technical words or something like this. I received feedback. So I took that. Some people said that I used, let's say, some complex in structure, so I took that.
Yeah.
So I'm taking criticism, let's say.
Do you have the ability to, let's say, determine whether this is good to implement and this is just criticism? You don't
it's
fall in there?
Yeah, sorry. It's the same as, let's say, being the captain of the ship. You see, like you're the one in front seeing the horizon of the sea. Nobody
receiving
sees,
feedback.
Exactly. Nobody sees the horizon except for you.
Yeah.
So, for example, you're my assistant, you tell me something from behind is coming, I don't see it. So I have the ability to either look and see or trust you.
Yeah.
See,
So you have the ability to filter out the people
Exactly.
who, yeah, who
Because
to trust.
sometimes, let's say, sometimes some critics are not relevant to certain situations. See, so for example, Badis, you write a poem. You wrote it in a state, being in X emotional state.
Yeah.
I come and read the poem and I tell you, why did you use this word and not this word?
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't have the ability to do this because I'm not in your shoes. Because this word,
you're not in that state.
exactly,
emotional
because
state.
this word was more expressive than this in your mind.
What part of your book was the most fun to write?
I would say concepts and concepts. Say, for example, I talked about the gable and the shade and so on. It's like a triangular system that exists in this, so in the self, the shelf, the shade, and the child. Those are the ones I had much fun in, because I had to. It was very easy to copy and paste the experiments and just analyze what I had to analyze.
And did you expect that people would have fun also experiencing the reading process from this book?
That's a nice question.
For example, you talked about the emotional state, and me, for example, I'm not in that emotional state when you were writing. How would I relate or match the energy somehow? Or will I do this, for example?
Yeah.
Through the words you used.
Yes. So it's given examples. Like one of the things that whenever I mention a concept that I find that people, I understand that people find difficult, I give examples, I simplify. I either give a story, like a personal story, a personal experiment, examples.
Yeah.
So this is to get people to understand the concept in a very simplified way.
Now moving on to a part I found really interesting for also the audience. The questions related to publishing books in Algeria. Maybe you know some. First question, do you see a bright future for writing in Algeria, and how do you see its current state?
Personally, it's very difficult to give you like an absolute answer regarding writing in Algeria, because a lot of people, let's say, write, but they are in the shade.
Yeah, they are not authors.
Let's not say authors, but their talent is not recognized yet.
Oh, yeah.
You see? So you find a lot of people on Instagram who say writer,
Yes,
but then they end up writing on social media feeds instead of actually going for bigger products. So writing in Algeria, there are a lot of talents. There are plenty of talents. I have a lot of friends who write. But then do they have the courage to shoot the bigger shot?
Okay.
So this is what distinguishes you from a writer and a potential good writer, as I said earlier. You see?
For the publishing part, like you wrote a book and now you want people to read it, to give it, for example, a cover and to make it physical, like a proper book. Do you think that we have the right people managing the publishing process?
Personally, like, I didn't have problems. I didn't have any problems, but
you were autonomous, right?
Yeah.
From the beginning. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
So you didn't have any problems, but let's say the cover was provided by my friend Amir. So he designed the cover. For publishing, I went for self-publishing. Like, I paid money to get the book published, but it's very nice because, let's say, there are publication houses or houses of publication who print in lower quantity. So you pay them a sort of symbolic price or money. So they print the book in 50 copies, 100, however you want.
Do they like, for example, helping smaller writers to shine, or do they just care for the bigger picture to come and publish a book?
I think it's a very nice question because, let's say, houses of publication in Algeria don't really care to promote. Let's say, many of them don't really I'm not going to say care, but they don't really pay attention to actually promoting the writer.
Yeah, that's
in
what. Yeah,
different
promotion.
platforms. Yes, different platforms. So what they do is just they take your money, they publish, and you do everything. So this is
Your
the
book is
challenging part.
published.
Exactly. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Thank you for the money.
We're done. Do you think that Algerian books are poorly mediatized? And how writers like you make their work known? For example, you were autonomous, you said. How did you go through the process of promotion and all that things?
All right. So I think let's say books in general in Algeria don't really get the recognition they get. Starting from the reading tranche of people to the media and so on and so forth. Like, we're not having the spotlight shed on writing and reading in precise. So it's very difficult for a writer to get popular in Algeria, especially if you write in English, because let's say the society is slowly inclined to French and Arabic. So it's very difficult to, let's say, spot the niche of your book.
How do writers like you, autonomous writers, make their book known, for example?
The first thing I did is work on social media, like promote on social media, have a Facebook page, publish the book on Amazon as well.
Yeah, I've seen the
And
link.
I'm going to put it in Goodreads as well, so I can have reviews.
Can we still have it
on
physical?
Amazon? Yeah, you can.
Amazon or other stores?
Other stores, I still have few copies with me. So
Okay.
for if you, maybe you need to go to the house of publication.
Did it paid off? Did you feel like
It did, yeah, it did.
I'm not talking like material wise, but for state of mind, everything.
Material-wise, it's not going to pay off because I remember, let's say, a poem by Charles Bukowski. He says, if you want to do it, you need to sacrifice money, wives, girlfriends, and so on and so forth. Like, if you don't have that ability, don't even try. This is what he said. So I'm paraphrasing. So what I had as a return on the investment that I had during the writing process is to recognize the limits of myself and to be proud of myself no matter what.
Of course.
And to, let's say, process all the stages and phases that I went through, because I went through a lot of downs.
Yeah.
I hit rock bottom during the writing process. And this is something people are not going to see. If you're writing something, people can't see this.
Yeah.
They see the final product. And it's not something you can blame people with.
Yeah.
You have to accept it.
You went through the process and
Exactly.
they have seen the
The
final
result.
product.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That was all for our interview. Thank you, Oussama, for being here and answering the questions. Our audience will highly appreciate that.
I wish.
Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.
Thank you.
Ooh. We have mics, so okay.
No, just tell me. Just do this.
We're filming. Thank you. Start.